Back is Dorsey to throw. Yeah! And he throws it in the end zone.
Off to the races. Can I catch it?
The Ohio State of Mind podcast, hosted by Josh Keenan and Chris Risdon.
Some people call me the space cowboy.
Josh, you're killing
me. And some people call me Chris. They call him Josh. This is the Ohio State of Mind podcast. And today we have a very special guest who I'm told is one of the, if not the biggest Steve Miller Band fans of all time. Josh, introductions for our guests?
Yeah, so today we got on the show Jeff Risdon joined us. Jeff and I have known each other since 2014, believe it or not. My first scouting report for Jeff was for DetroitLionsDraft.com of Dustin Vaughan, the quarterback. I think he was an undrafted free agent, went to the Dallas Cowboys. Now you're the managing editor of Lions Wire and Draft Wire, which is awesome. Congratulations. But we go way back, man. And I know there's no one that I respect more than Jeff. I gotta put Bill Carroll up there too, because he's just a historian. But I mean,
I love Bill. Yeah, Bill and I share a birthday, so he's awesome. Yeah,
and I'm aware
it's good to be on your show. I haven't been on your show yet. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. Chris is our producer, so we actually got music and stuff. So it's a little bit changed since the last time you've been on one of our shows. But I'm aware that you don't actually like Steve Miller Band. That's
a fun. It's become a running bit in my life. Yes, for a while my Twitter tagline was "I bleeping hate the Steve Miller Band." It's a very very long, complex story, but I appreciate that. That's how I know you know me well, Josh, because we do go way back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You, me, Donovan. It's there's a whole.
Yeah, that's right.
Brad Ward. Yeah, I stay in contact with all those guys. Thank you for you. Big part of the reason why I'm at Buckeyes Wire. Big part of the reason why I get to go to every Ohio State game. And I know what I know because you've actually opened my eyes a lot as far as the draft goes and scouting goes. And I'm not as ignorant and myopic as I was before. It's crazy because I'll go back and I'll look at some of those old scouting reports and I'll be like, man, I was just so set on this guy being this. And that's just, you really taught me how that's not.
You gotta keep the eyes open, man. I'm glad I could help you out.
Yeah. But, we got some Ohio State stuff that we need to talk about with you at first. Absolutely. Chris, is it okay if we dive in?
Dive right in.
Jeff, we know we know you're super busy. So we want to make sure we dive in and answer some of these questions that we got.
Cool.
The Ohio State fan base is super split on the Matt Patricia. Okay, they're not even split. 75% of the people hate Matt Patricia. I was so shocked at the nasty messages that I got about Matt Patricia. We have a lot of Michigan fans that listen to the show too, and they were all some of them were texting me like ha 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 ha, and it's like, well, that's I don't really know how to respond to it. My immediate reaction was like, hey, this is cool. This is a guy with a Super Bowl resume, a former NFL head coach who's going to be a defensive coordinator at the college level. My only question is, how can he recruit? And Jim Knowles was such an awful recruiter that the bar is so low. I was like, this is a home run hire. And obviously, you're probably aware of the turmoil that was in that defensive coaching room at Ohio State. So, but before I keep rambling on, what is your initial thoughts of Matt Patricia coaching in college at Ohio State?
I was surprised that Ohio State went for him. And so my prism in looking at him was as a very, very failed coach of the Detroit Lions. And it's tough. I'm going to try to be fair to him. I think the biggest thing, there was two big issues that he had in Detroit. One, he needed very specific styles of players that couldn't play anywhere else to play in his defense. Guys like Jamie Collins, Trey Flowers, Snacks Harrison. Like, he's very regimented in how he sees guys and doesn't deviate from that, which I don't think is very good when you're trying to recruit from a wide swath of 4- and 5-star talents from around the country. Maybe that'll be different at the college level. I don't know. I hope he learned his lesson there. The other thing is that I met Matt Patricia a handful of times away from the Lions context, and I liked him. He was a nice guy. I live in Holland, Michigan, which is about halfway between Chicago and Detroit, but up a little bit, up on the West Coast. If you go straight across the lake from me, you're right into the Illinois-Wisconsin border. So, like, I'm not in Detroit. He actually came out here for a weekend one time, and all these people were like, Coach Patricia, like, he's a great guy. Like, I really enjoyed, like the waiters and, hotel clerks were like, we love this guy. He tipped very well. I like that. That's good for me. And then he gets in front of the room of players and he's like, just not that guy. He was very disingenuous in how he treated his players. Probably the most notorious example is Darius Slay, all-pro corner, the best player on that defense. And he goes in, and it was very early in his tenure. And they were just like, he walks in the locker room, and it's just casual locker room conversation. And Slay was talking to somebody else and was talking up Odell Beckham. And Patricia comes over and is like, if you love him so much, why don't you go like bleep his bleep? And like, whoa. Like, oh, like threw that down. And like, he was just dictatorial. Trying to be, and this from the world of all the Bill Belichick disciples, from Bill O'Brien to Eric Mangini to all those guys. He was the worst in terms of embodying the negativity part of that, and his inflexibility with the players and his like downright rudeness to them was it didn't go well, to say the least. Another good example, and this is one that's probably a little bit more pertinent from the college level. Quandre Diggs, who's a pretty good safety, went to him, and I know this from somebody else who was in the room, went to Patricia and said, hey, can we make this tweak in our coverage scheme? Because what we're doing here, like the linebackers in front of us can't do what you're asking them to do, and that's making us get out of position trying to cover for them. That was met by Quandre Diggs being traded 24 hours later.
Ooh.
So that's not how you run an NFL team. You can probably get away with that more at the NFL level than you can at the college level. Now that the transfer portal is open like that, like if you're treating people like that, they're not going to come to you, and two, if they're there, they're not going to stay. So that would be, from an Ohio State standpoint, what I would be really, really worried about with Matt Patricia. Now, maybe he has learned to be more authentic and be more, user-friendly, for lack of a better term. Y'all better hope so, is all I'll say.
Well, can I ask a question? You might not know the answer to this, but
sure.
A lot of the things that you're describing kind of sound like Jim Knowles a little bit. I mean, it's been detailed by everybody that Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson butt heads constantly. When Jim Knowles came to Ohio State, he was notorious for being like, hey, my defensive scheme takes time. It depends on the safeties. We have this jack position. He was moving. He's, one of the biggest things that I still remember that upsets me about the Jim Knowles tenure is he had Jack Sawyer, a former 5-star guy who ended up, Captain Jack with the scoop and score, and it would be one of the most iconic Ohio State players ever. He had him out of position for half his career, because he's so dead set on doing what he did. And he runs that cage rushing scheme, which that's why Larry Johnson butted heads. So my thought process for the next hire, obviously with the offensive staff, you have Brian Hartline. He hired a bunch of guys that don't have a lot of experience on the offensive side of the ball. So I thought, okay, going to grab a guy like Matt Patricia who has a vast array of experience is a good move. And I guess I just assumed that he was a guy that was going to be flexible and kind of come in and not make waves. But that's not what you're describing at all. You're describing another Jim Knowles. Yeah,
and again, that's the experience that he's had, and I know from when he came from New England, like the guys who came from New England with him, and he brought quite a few of them, were like, that's who Coach is. He's got his style, and he's going to make players fit his style more than he's going to bring in players or change to adapt to the talent that he's got. Your Jack Sawyer example is a good one. I don't know Jim Knowles personally. I'm aware of the conflict stories quite a bit. But yeah, I think the the willingness to adapt to the talent is something that if he does it, now Matt Patricia, like he is literally a rocket scientist, even though he has a pencil over his ear and carries a laminated sheet. Like he took a lot of crap for that. But maybe he's a new guy. Like he's lost like over half of his body weight. He looks great. I saw him from afar, not this year, but last year.
Yeah.
Like, is that him? Like maybe that's part of a metamorphosis into a better coach. I hope that's the case for all you Buckeye fans. I really do. And I say that as somebody, Josh, you know this about my family. My dad is an Ohio State Buckeye. He's a grad. He has a prosthetic leg that is Ohio State branded. So he's hardcore. And I want my dad to spend his golden years in happiness because nothing he loves more than Ohio State football.
Well, there's not a lot. You're not saying a lot of positive stuff, but I will say this, and this is a better question for you than me, right? Because I'm very ignorant to how much these coaches and these staffs know. Would everything you're describing, if you know it, then Ryan Day should know that, right?
Agreed.
So if he's going to hire a guy like that, do you think that that's a positive sign of like Ryan Day knows that this guy has changed?
I think there might be some motivation on Ryan Day's part to deflect some negative attention from himself and have a fall guy, in the words of Chris Carter. Have your fall guy. It very well be.
Okay, that's very interesting because he's also the co-defensive coordinator too. That's very important.
That's right. That's right. So I can see him like run game, pass game coordinator type stuff. He does have like his base defense when he's got guys that can run it is very nice. It's much more. So he's from the Bill Parcells school, the Bill Belichick side of that, but more to the Romeo Crennel side of that. If you like break down the whole thing, and if you follow the NFL, you kind of know where I'm going with that. Like his defense is much more read and react and less proactive attacking. And I wonder, like, if you've got great athletes that can recover quickly and can, especially cover down the field well for a while, it's a great defense. If you don't have the athletes and don't have the guys who can, cover, it very much relies on guys being positionally responsible and covering for one another if something happens. And that's, again, if you got great athletes in Ohio State, we're going to talk about all the guys that they're putting in the draft, and there's going to be more and more every year. It's just like that. That's what Ohio State is. I can see that working better there than it does in the NFL. But again, it's going to be, will the players buy into it? Where they're going to be like this guy made us. The other one of the big negatives that came out of him from Detroit. We play in a dome, as does Minnesota. Before the Lions played in Minnesota, this is in his second year, I believe it was. It snowed out, so they moved outside from the inside practice facility and practiced outside in the snow and blizzard conditions for 2 days. And everybody was like, "What are you trying to prove here?" And he refused to answer questions. He actually shut down a press conference. Was like, "No more questions." Like that's the kind of guy you're getting. Personality wise, and I'm not sure. Again, I have a son who's a college athlete. Like I understand the dynamics of college players. Like I don't know many kids are going to buy that. That's something that he's really got to work on if he's going to be involved in recruiting, and more to the point, keeping the players there who are there already, and not having them transfer portal to Indiana or Akron or down the road in Athens where I went.
Huh. Well, I could ask you 75 more questions, but I feel like I'm taking up all your time. Chris, do you have something you want to add?
Let's get to these comments. Hey, guys, sorry, like Green Bear in hand. Hey, happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well, Will. Ryan Day, he will not tolerate 1 minute of coaches acting this way and the way this guy is describing it. I mean, we would hope not. I mean, you also came back in their Doug and said, hey, Jeff's saying the opposite of what Matt Patricia said he wants to do at Ohio State. But again, like Jeff said, I mean, let's be real. Matt Patricia and Ryan Day, like Jeff said, Ryan Day has probably had all of these conversations with Matt Patricia before. before he sat there in front of a camera and a microphone too. So believe me, I think there's tendencies or practices that Coach Day has seen in Matt Patricia, and at the end of the day, it's Ryan Day being the second highest paid coach in college football that's calling the shots. So I mean, I'm a little alarmed to hear all of this, Jeff. I mean, I was hoping to come and hear just these alluring, great stories, this, that, and the third. But no, I appreciate I appreciate the honesty.
I do like, and again, from meeting Coach a handful of times, like off the field, like there is a good guy there. And hopefully he has had the epiphany that the reason why he failed in Detroit was because he was not the same guy to his players and to his team that he was outside of the organization. And like this has really been driven home because now in Detroit we have a coach who's like beloved by freaking everybody in Dan Campbell, who is the most authentic person you will ever meet. Yeah. And the juxtaposition between those two and the transition between the two is it's eye-opening, and it probably in a way makes us remember the Patricia years even less fondly than we already do. They weren't good. There's no doubt about that. But again, Ryan, you're right. Ryan Day absolutely knows all this and knew this going in. And, again, Patricia, I do like the concept, and I believe that it can happen with him too, that, being humbled in the way that he has been. And again, losing all that weight, like that personal transformation, like he can be a new guy. Like he can reinvent himself.
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen that before. And that has to be the hope that you go with. And again, that it's not out of the question that he can be that guy. That would be about as optimistic as I can be about it.
Right. And that, hopefully that's the case. But my mind keeps going to people that like Mike McCarthy. Oh, I bought a PFF subscription. I'm a different person now. Analytics is my best friend. And then, or Cedric Benson cutting his hair because he didn't want to be compared to Ricky Williams. And then, it's like you go through. Oh
my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, you go through all these like, oh, that guy changed how he looked. But it's like, you definitely got me more scared than I was before. I think that the biggest saving grace for me, and tell me if this is just me being biased, is that I still at Ohio State, we know that they have two cornerbacks that are fringe first round picks for next year's draft: Jermaine Matthews, Davidson Bedosen, Caleb Downs is one of the best safeties in college football, and they got 4 and 5-star recruits on the defensive line. So I still don't think that the floor. The 2018 Ohio State defense was maybe the worst defense since 1990, and it was still. Yeah. One that they won I think they still won the Big Ten. Yeah, what I mean? Yeah, so it's what is the floor as an Ohio State fan? What is the floor for Matt Patricia? I mean, Jim Knowles, was like I said, they were button heads and they won the national championship. So what is really the floor?
There's so much talent on that team. I mean, if Abe Benson learns how to not hold on every play, he's going to be a first round pick.
Yeah,
and Downs goes into next year, probably the number one player on my board to start next. Like he's unreal. So like they've got a lot of talent. They're going to reload. I don't follow recruiting at all, but I know that look, it's Ohio State. Y'all get dudes, man. Like that's
yeah.
And it's hard to screw up that much talent. And I'm not even saying that he would screw it up, but like you would have to like be worse than he was in Detroit to not be at least a top 3 defense in the Big Ten next year. And again, you win the Big Ten or come in second, and I would expect that Ohio State will be predicted to do that. You're in the mix, like that's where you want to be. And again, like his defensive concepts. And he is very good at identifying like what other teams' tendencies and things like that. The film, like he's good. He's good there. Like you're not going to get caught by surprise. The way don't shoot me. I'm married into a Michigan family. We have season tickets. I go to a lot of Michigan games. I'm not a fan. It's very easy to do things to Michigan's defense, especially this past year with Wink Martindale there, that they weren't expecting or weren't ready for based on their game film. Ohio State, unfortunately, didn't do that. but like I saw Oregon do that. I saw
Yes.
I saw Indiana do that. I saw Illinois do that, and like that's not like the team will be ready. The players will have the information at hand that they can apply to their field, and that is one thing that I do think Matt Patricia will do very well for you.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because we got Doug here that says he's going to go back and rewatch the podcast that didn't have the doom and gloom. He says he can't. so thanks, Doug. So hang on, Doug, because Jeff just gave us some good news. And also, the thing I like about what you said too is maybe Tim Walton is another guy on the staff that has awful defensive coordinator experience. He was the defensive coordinator for the Rams, I believe. And
Yes,
then he was with the Jaguars during a pretty miserable stint. He has his NFL resume is absolutely miserable.
He was in Detroit for a brief time too, and not a good team.
Yeah. So his NFL resume is pretty miserable, and he's come in and just locked it down on the recruiting efforts as a defensive coordinator as far. So maybe that's another, those two guys combined, along with a young guy like Matt Gary who's on the rise. Maybe that can kind of set the ship in the right direction before it kind of falls apart. If that makes sense. I don't know. It's very interesting. You said a lot of stuff that I don't know how to justify. I don't know how to put the Buckeye bias on. If that's,
I do. I'll say this: if Ryan Day can pull this off and manage it, it cements himself as one of the best coaches in the country. Not that he's not already,
really?
But look, a lot of people from the NFL level were incredibly skeptical of this move. Like, what? It really caught them much more than Bill O'Brien did. And I think because Bob had some college time, and he's doing well. Chip Kelly, sort of the same thing. There's a lot more skepticism at the NFL level that Matt Patricia is going to work at the college level than there was with those guys. Is probably the polite way to say it. There's a lot of people who are like, what the hell? But again, Ohio State's a juggernaut. Like there's so much inertia within that program that they're going to they're not going to fall off. Even if it winds up not working out right away and it's a one and done situation, still 9-3, 10-2, like it's not going to torpedo a season. Yeah. No, I agree. You did highlight some positives there though. There's always positives with every negative. There's always negatives with every positive. That's scouting season.
It's kind of funny too, because if you speak to the guys that covered him with the Lions and paid close attention to the Lions, it's almost like they have a completely different Matt Patricia than the guys you talked to that were associated with him when he was with the Patriots. Because the guys I speak to that were associated with the Patriots, they're like, oh, he's a cool guy, he's a nice guy, he's a chill guy. And it's like, dude, no one that I talked to that covered him in Detroit. It's almost like you think that maybe, again, this is me being biased, maybe him being a head coach, it kind of changes your brain to where you're trying to reenact. I know a lot of my friends
that's absolutely fair. I know exactly where you're going with that point, and that could very well be. I wouldn't deny that at all.
When I speak to some of my friends on the Michigan beat too, and they said Sherrone Moore at the beginning of the season was kind of like that about like he was saying weird Harbaugh isms, and they're like,
he was not being himself.
Yeah. They're like, he kind of, they didn't look good. They're struggling against Fresno State, and then towards the end, he kind of got his groove.
For better, for worse, and mostly for the better. There is only one Jim Harbaugh, thank God.
Yes. Yeah. Chris, do you have any questions before we shift to the NFL draft?
No, I would actually love to shift to the NFL draft. I don't want to keep Jeff too long. I know he's got prior engagements as well, because you've got some NFL draft questions. I've got some quick NFL draft questions too. But I know we've got some that pertain to Ohio State, so go right ahead. I
got one thing I want to go before we hit the NFL draft. You brought up Bill O'Brien, so now it's free reign. I'm allowed to do this.
Sure.
Is it possible that Bill O'Brien is a genius now that the Deshaun Watson thing's over?
Okay.
Let's evaluate. Let's evaluate. Tua sucks. Okay. I mean, he's not great. Deshaun Watson, he's not great. Christian Hackenberg, not great. All those guys were great under Bill O'Brien. Is it possible Bill O'Brien is a genius and is it underappreciated?
He is a fantastic coach, and as you know, I covered his Texans teams.
That's right. Yeah,
I thought he was a great coach there. As a personnel manager, as a GM, he was like as bad as it gets. But as a coach, his offensive system and the way that he made it work with an offensive line where, like, their best offensive lineman in the 2018 playoffs, where they darn near beat the Chiefs, was Ode Ibushi. Guarantee half your listeners have never heard of that guy. Like, that line was trash, and they won the South Division, and they nearly beat the Chiefs in Mahomes' first run. They were up in that game, I believe, 24-0 before they collapsed. Bill O'Brien, like, I think he's a fantastic coach. Again, keep him the hell away out of the front office, but as a coach, heck yeah, man.
I want to put an asterisk on my statement too. It wasn't Tua, it was Bryce Young. He won the Heisman Trophy with Bryce Young, which is an even better example of his greatness. But when Ohio State hired him, that was what I was running on, and all the comments were not in agreement. So
like you're flipped on where I am with Patricia.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear that you agreed with me there. So perfect.
Oh yeah.
All right, Chris, what's your draft questions, bro?
Couple draft. Well, my our draft question pertained to Ohio State. Josh, we had a question about Will Howard. Go ahead.
Well, the question was answered by our dear friend Quad, who's not in the chat. You may remember Quad, receiver at Akron University. Quad Smith. He was talking about Will Howard, kind of making fun of Will Howard's combine performance, but he was being serious. He's like, is he now? I mean, this is a guy that was rumored to be a fringe first round, second round. Obviously, you're more intelligent than us, but when there were articles online that we're reading that said that he was a fringe guy because of that playoff performance. Well, he had a miserable combine. What is your take on all that? Is he just off the radar completely now, or what do you see?
I think because this quarterback class is so bad, and it is, I think people were desperately looking for somebody to raise up, and he played great throughout the CPF, college football, CFP. He was fantastic. And I think that was like, okay, he could be our savior for this class. And then they look back at the more body of work, and the combine didn't exactly play to his strengths. And now he is kind of where he was going into the playoff, where he's probably a middle round pick with some upside. Looks like a guy who can be a quality NFL backup, like Cooper Rush out of the Cowboys, who just signed with the Ravens this week. He's going to be in that ilk of quarterback. Taylor Heineke is another one that fits into that, different stylistically, but that's sort of like where he's pigeonholed now. Is like a guy who's going to be in the middle rounds. You draft him, you hope that he can be your number 2 for the entire life of his contract, and if you have to throw him in for a starter too, he's not going to wet the bed, and I don't think he would. So that's in this class, that's QB4, like maybe QB3 for some people. I think he is. I should have looked at that. He is. I believe he's my QB5. So and then that would be commensurate with like a 5th or a 6th round pick this year. But again, I don't have a first round grade on Cam Ward. I don't get it. I don't see it.
Really?
I just don't. No. I actually prefer Jackson Dart to him.
Really?
Because I think Jackson Dart reminds me career arc-wise, but not necessarily stylistically, of what Bo Nix did a year ago. And I think so many people hold what happened at USC against Jackson Dart the same way that they held what happened at Auburn against Bo Nix, and like he was fantastic with Denver this year. I could see Dart doing that in the NFL too.
That's a great comparison. Wow. I really like that one.
Chris, but again, you can't let me ramble on because I'll ask a million questions. Chris,
I absolutely love that Jackson Dart comparison. I've got a few questions for you, Jeff, before we get out of here. I did read on your draft wire under USA Today. I saw that you ranked your running backs yesterday.
I did.
My question I think everybody's a consensus on 1 and 2 with Ashton Genty and followed by Martin Hampton. My question is to you: what sticks out? What puts Travion Henderson above Caleb Johnson for you?
I think the speed, the big play ability, the ability to create when the block isn't there. Caleb's just going to try to run like through where the block's supposed to be, even if it's up his offensive lineman's ass. Like that's what he does. He's good at it. Travion's going to cut around it and explode off of it. I was very impressed with his vision. That was one of the things that I had written down on the preseason scouting report. It's like, let's see if that vision develops. Well, it did. And I think his decisiveness in attacking got better and more consistently too. And that's something that plays very well in the NFL. I think he's going to be a very good NFL back. He's got to stay healthy. He did last year, and that's where you go with him. So yeah, he's on the fringe of a first round grade for me. I believe he is number 41 on my big board, which unfortunately I don't have in front of me. I like him a lot.
That was my next question. Would you bat an eye if we're talking around pick 30, 31, 32, and you see Travion Henderson come off the board?
Not at all, because I do think there is a little bit of a gap there between him and Caleb, and then Quinshon is number 5 for me. There is a tier there where if you're wanting that guy, and again Travion, like his pass protection, like wow, man, there's a lot to like with him.
Yeah. Question from the chat. I have to ask Jeff his thoughts on the Chase and the Higgins signing. Those 2 4-year extensions we saw last night.
Woo! It's crazy. It's crazy that it's the Bengals, first of all. And I want to say good for them that they're taking care of their own, but they do realize that there's 22 positions on the field, right? Like you can't just win with wide receivers. Again, Jamar's, for my money, he's the best wide receiver in the league. I mean, he won the Triple Crown. He had one of the greatest years ever. That they locked him up the way they did, that's awesome. If you're a Bengals fan, you should be very excited about that. And the fact that they have finally decided to keep T. Higgins after, 2 years of contractual limbo, like that's a good sign. Like that's not something that the Bengals of old would have done. Yeah. I just worry that now I want to see what happens with Trey Hendrickson. They need to keep him. I think he's like he's again the NFL sack leader. Like you want to take care of your guys there. I just worry that the volume of money that they gave out to these guys, and I know like you can fudge with the numbers with the cap. That's a lot. That's a lot of commitment to 3 guys, and then you got Burrow too. I mean, I understand like wanting to make Joe Burrow happy and as great as he can be, but
you got Wills.
Who's playing linebacker? Who's playing safety? Who's covering people? Who's playing opposite Hendrickson now that Hubbard's gone? Like, I don't know. It's hard.
Another question I've got for you. We touched on Dan Campbell. Mm-hmm. Great regular season. A very shocking end to the playoff run this year.
Yeah.
You are right now, you're GM Brad Holmes. Okay. Who are we taking in April?
Tyleik Williams would be nice.
Ooh, going with the Buckeye.
He is certainly somebody that fits what they need. Okay. Now they did sign Roy Lopez this week, and it's a 1-year deal. They need reinforcements on the defensive line. DJ Reader played way too many snaps last year. Ali McNeil is going to be out for at least maybe the first part of the season. He tore his ACL in early December, late November. So they need to impact the quarterback is the number one thing that they have to do. Tyleik can do that pretty well. I'm looking at I like Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College, but he's a little bit smaller than what they've liked, and that's probably too high for him. I like, I'm trying to think who I just put in mock drafts. Landon Jackson from Arkansas is somebody who fits what they want a lot. I don't particularly like him. As I told people down at the combine, and it was a good line, and I got last, so I'll share it here. He wouldn't have any twitch if he was being tased. Like, there's just nothing to – like, there's no twitch to his game at all. He reminds me a tremendous amount of Quentin Coples, who was with the Jets a few years ago. Like, big, power to speed rusher at the college level who, feasted on really bad offensive linemen, and they got to the NFL, and, like, they put their hand on him, and he doesn't know what to do. I don't like guys like that, but they seem to. So I'm hopeful that it's not him. They do need offensive line help, and I have been advocating for Donovan Jackson for a long time there. And I love Donovan Jackson, by the way, is my number one graded offensive lineman in this class. I would leave him at tackle. What I saw from him at tackle in the college football playoff, CFP, I got to learn that, was outstanding. Blew away what I've seen from Will Campbell and Kelvin. I don't get Kelvin Banks at all, but Armand Membu's really good. He would be number 2, but they're not. Donovan could be there. Josh Simmons could be there. I kind of hope not for his sake, because he's really, really good. But again, the knee injury, like that tends to knock you down. So yeah, they certainly need edge help and defensive line reinforcements. And with the offensive line where it's at, they lost Kevin Zeitler. They do have Christian Mahogany, last year's rookie, who played very well. But Graham Glasgow he looked to be at the end, the last 6 weeks of last season. He was quite literally Pro Football Focus's worst offensive lineman in the league. And that's being sandwiched between an all-pro center in Frank Ragnow and a really good left tackle in Taylor Decker. They need something there too. So
yeah. And last question: does Chris Spielman make your Detroit Lions top 5 favorite players of all time?
Oh, Josh knows this about me. Chris Spielman was my football hero. I grew up in northern Ohio. I used to go to Ohio State games a lot. I went to Northland High School in Columbus. My dad is a Buckeye. We went to just about every game. I actually was watching your intro, and I'm like, I was at that game where Keith Byers went out of his shoe.
Nice.
I remember that. Spielman would be very, 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 very high on that for me. The consummate line. I believe he still leads the team in tackles all time. And he only played like 7 seasons in Detroit. Just monstrous player. And to be able to get to converse with him, and Josh knows I'm not someone who's shy or like starstruck very often. When I first met Chris Spielman, I was just like, like, never meet your heroes. Well, I met one of mine, and it's fantastic. He's doing a wonderful job up there.
It should be noted that Chris, I know you got to get out of here, but I want to share. Chris hates Chris Spielman. Just so you know, when we were in 7th grade, we went to it was like an event. He was on the radio, and during the commercial breaks, he'd sign autographs for the kids. I went up, got my autograph, and Chris was behind me, and the radio went back on the air. So Chris is left just standing there in front of Chris Spielman, and he's doing his radio spot. No. So then the next commercial, Chris Spielman takes off the set. This is back when he was still,
jacked up.
Yeah,
he still looks like he can play.
Oh yeah. He would definitely beat the hell out of me. But yes. He looks down at Chris, and I can't remember exactly what he says, but something along the lines: "You want an autograph? Speak up like a man. Talk to me like a man."
Oh my God, really?
Said,
dude,
wow.
it was amazing. Chris
Wow.
said his autograph. We got in the car. It was just.
I'm sitting there holding a Buckeye pennant. He looks at me.
Shaking 7th grade.
Yeah. He looks at me and he says, "You want an autograph, bud? You need to speak up like a man." I was like,
wow. That's a hell of a story.
Oh, you need to speak up like a man. Here's another Chris Spielman story. When I was in college, they had a free autograph event with Chris Spielman, and they rented out this giant ballroom at the Ohio Union. Okay, and it was taped off, right? The big velvet rope, right? Like it was good, like a ride at Disney World. And I walk in, and it's about 50 yards away, and it's just me. It's just with my 1986 Athlon magazine with him on the cover. So I start going through the rope, in about 2 minutes. It's a long rope. So, I don't want to exaggerate. Like, let's say a minute passes, and he goes, "Stop it. Just come on. You're embarrassing both of us. Get up here." I was like, okay. And he was sitting there bored, signing up. Because, at this point, I'm the only one that knows who he is. This is 2015, and with a bunch of college kids, they don't care who Chris Spielman is. He gave me a stack of about that many autographs because he was just sitting there doodling. I'll never forget it. Oh, you're embarrassing both of us.
I absolutely love Chris Spielman. That is my Ohio State jersey that I still have. And I have worn it to the big house. And most Michigan fans are like, they hate everything Ohio State.
Yeah.
Like they're pretty cool about Chris Spielman. They really are.
Oh, that's awesome. God. That's cool. That's cool. Well, we know you got to get out of here.
All right, hit me with like one or two more quick questions.
Okay. We talked to this NFL agent. I think you're Allison Fenniger, and we were talking about how the Ohio State guys wouldn't compete at the combine at all. And the next thing you know, they're all competing. This kind of brings me back. This is an overall Ohio State question, but I mean, it's more centered around Will Howard. Do you think that helped or hurt those guys? Because it sounds like in the case of Will Howard, he would have been better off sitting at home.
Yeah, he probably could have, and waited for the pro day. I don't know. That's a tough one. Like in general, and I subscribe to the Pat Kerwin, former Jets GM, works with CBS, works on Sirius NFL Radio. I've gotten to know Pat over the years. And one of the things that he says is, if you're not competing, you're telling me you're hiding something, even if you're not. And that's how most NFL teams perceive it. Like, you better work out if you can. Otherwise, it's going to make me question why you didn't. And you don't want me to ask that question. And I'm a big believer in that. So I do think that competing there, even if you don't do well, like pro day is a chance to overcome that. You get a chance to meet with the players or meet with the teams and sell yourself again. Whereas now if you don't do it and then you have a bad pro day, like, where do you go? You know, you're looking for data points and you're taking away one of the data points there from the analytic people. Like, they're going to want to see, that ball velocity. Well, it wasn't great for Will Howard coming out of his hand at the combine, getting I don't even know what it was. But it wasn't good. I was there. I sat in the stands and watched it. It wasn't great. But now he's got a chance when he goes back to Ohio State, and like where he's more comfortable. Maybe he slept wrong in who knows? But he's got a chance to overcome that. And if he hadn't done that and then had a bad pro day, then it's like, no, no, you can't do that.
Talking about throwing to his own guys, people that he's comfortable with as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be remiss to think if Jeremiah Smith isn't running deep balls for him come his pro day. Let's be real, right?
I hope so.
Well, I guess my thought process too, and this is what Austin was saying, it was like they just played. Ohio State just played. Ohio State
They did.
So that was his justification.
And so there was some pressure because all the Notre Dame guys had showed up at the Senior Bowl, and none of the Ohio State guys did. And that I guess that got thrown back at a couple of the Ohio. I know it got thrown back at a couple of the Ohio State players. Look, it wasn't like bad or anything, but it was more like, how come you guys didn't do this when Jack Kaiser's down here busting his ass? He got hurt in that game and came down and played it, and like a week later. So I think there might have been some question answering going on with that there. Just my theory on that. I don't know that, but that would make sense to me.
Okay. And then Will's got a good question here. We'll try to keep this Ohio State focused. As far as Ohio State guys, who's someone that you think who's going to be your reach and who is dropping? I guess who's an Ohio State guy you think is going to be a bust that's going to be overdrafted? Maybe a diamond in the rough Ohio State wise as well.
Yeah, so Jack Sawyer's lack of athleticism concerns me for where he's being projected to go. I think he's number 66 on my board, and I think he's probably going to get drafted a little bit above that. I think he's going to go in the 40 to 60 range. By the way, the Lions have picked number 60, and he's absolutely a Dan Campbell kind of guy. Just throwing that out there. I worry that his lack of length and he's very good at what he does, but what he does plays better in college than it does in the NFL. We've seen a lot of guys that have his style that just don't transition that well into the NFL. And doesn't mean that he's not a great player. It just means that it's a different game. And I'm not sold that he's going to be able to handle that next game as impactful as he was in college, because he was fantastic in college, great college player. I like Seth McLaughlin a lot. I know he's barely a Buckeye. I mean, you saw him for 6 weeks?
It still counts.
Yeah. I think he was on track to be one of the best centers, if not the best center in this class, and got derailed with the Achilles. I actually talked to him down in Indianapolis. Great dude. He really enjoyed his time in Columbus. Yeah, and it was he's a Southern Georgia boy. His favorite thing to do is like go bow hunting for like wild hogs. Like you don't do that in Columbus. Maybe get out to Lancaster, maybe, but not in Columbus.
That's awesome.
So I think, look, he's not gonna get drafted until probably day 3, very early on day 3 would be my guess right now. I think he has the potential to dramatically outplay that once he's healthy.
That's awesome. And I do like what you said about Jack Sawyer because he does kind of have like an old school John Cooper defensive end vibe. Ryan Miller, Luke Fickell, Simon Frazier. You know what I mean? Like those big classic giant white guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Oh, you're going back to the time when I lived in Ohio. I love some of those teams. I loved John Cooper.
He's the best.
He's such one real quick story before I get out. My first Senior Bowl, I flew down and you fly to Mobile, Alabama, you have to either fly to Atlanta or Charlotte to get there. And my connecting flight from Atlanta to Mobile, I sat next to Coach and brought up to him. I was a little nervous about it. I'm like tepid. I'm like, my dad's a huge Ohio State fan. I'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about it. And he was very open and candid about it. And he's like, for 355 days of the year, I was the best coach in the country. But whatever happened against Michigan, they just didn't work out for me. Like it was very and we'll do that with fans. Like he's really cool about fans coming up to him, and as long as they show some appreciation for how good he was, he's self-aware, and that's the most thing you can ask him. And he's given me some very good scouting advice over the years. I loved sitting next to him at Shrine Bowls back when he used to be down in St. Pete. I sat next to him on the bench one time watching offensive linemen, just like, "Hey, Coach, what are you looking at?" And he'd tell me, and I'm like, "Okay, I get it." Like, he wonderful man. I hope that his legacy is that. Remember, I don't think he ever lost more than 3 games in a season at Ohio State. Didn't win the one, unfortunately.
I'm with you. A big John Cooper State. Every time he has an autograph sign in Columbus, I go. I give him all my money. I got an Iowa State helmet, a Tulsa helmet. I sit there. I talk with him for an hour. He sits up in the press box. I eavesdrop and say hi to him every time. He's an amazing
wonderful
human
man.
being. I wrote an article. If the expanded playoffs were today, I mean, Ryan Day gets. I love Ryan Day. Has done a great job, but John Cooper would have done the same thing. With those, the 98 team with David Boston, Andy Katzenmoyer, the 94 team with Orlando Pace and Eddie George. I mean, those teams would have done damage in the expanded playoffs.
That team was so loaded.
You and I have talked about before that 1992 running back room is the best running back room in college football. Well, maybe not up there. Eddie George, Jeff Cawthorn, Robert Smith, Raymond Harris, all those guys played
Carlos
in the NFL.
Snow, Balder Benote.
All those guys played in the NFL and played substantial years. And it's even this walk-ons at the time, Terry Glenn, it's just unfortunate. Chris and I actually were talking about the 1990 recruiting class, which was his second recruiting class. He had 3 of the top 10 recruits. And unfortunately for him, one was academically ineligible and the other one was Robert Smith. But it's just kind of funny. Like he doesn't get enough credit for what he did and how he recruited nationally before anybody else was doing it. I talked to Michael Wiley. Michael Wiley, from a California kid, never saw an Ohio State game until John Cooper took him. No, it's just he doesn't get enough credit for what he did, what he does. I'm with you, big John Cooper guy here, but I'm also biased. That's how I grew up.
Doug says, "Hey, my oldest brother used to paint houses with John Jr. Quality people. Hey,
nice.
Love the person's story. Shows a true person, not in front of the camera. We all wholeheartedly agree. He missed on quarterbacks.
Disagree.
I have to disagree a bit.
Was a very good quarterback. Joe Germain was a very good quarterback. He should have played.
John Cooper dragged Ohio State out of the dark ages of offense. I would argue that.
Well, I don't know.
After Chris Carter.
Yeah, that's the quarterbacks were always like a sore spot, whether it was Herbie or
Herbie was a bad one.
Remember Jim Carsados?
Well, that's Earl Bruce.
Yeah, that is going back to Earl Bruce.
Yeah, and our Bruce recruited Herbstreit too.
So you go, so you're going into the 90s. You had Bobby Hoying, Joe Germain. That was him, right? He was still
Stanley Jackson. Yeah,
Stanley Jackson. Oh yeah,
and Belisari was a 5-star recruit. That it's actually funny that 1990 recruiting class, the number 1 recruit that year was Joe Pickens, a quarterback from St. Ignatius, who ended up blowing, but still,
Yes, he did. Yeah, I remember that 1990. That was my senior year of high school. So that was
well. There you go.
Very well.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we've kept you long enough. I know you're super busy, but we appreciate you hopping on. And Anytime you want to come on, or I appreciate everything you've done for me, and I appreciate that.
Oh man, it's good to be on with you. Thanks for having me. Get me on after the draft. We can break down like where these guys go and where they fit. I'd love to do that.
Hell yeah.
And talk more, especially like 80s and 90s Buckeye history like that. That gets me going, man.
Yeah. Oh man, next time you're on, I'll have to tell you about the hour conversation I had with Randy Gradishar. That guy's story is insane. No one. The guy. Long story, but it was great. Great.
Well,
Jeff,
we loved having you on. Everybody in the chat, if you guys want to check out Jeff's stuff, you can check him at DraftWire at USA.com. Lions Wire as well, everything for Detroit Lions at USA.com. Jeff, the podcast since 2015. That's just you and your buddy, just two passionate fans. Yes,
we do. Yep, we have a lot of fun with that, and we're delving very deep into draft stuff now. And you will hear some anti-Michigan stuff on this week's show. I will tell you that.
Okay. Well, I mean, we talked about John Cooper's dark days, but we're talking about bright futures for Detroit. So if you want to check out some quality Detroit Lions podcast, check out the Detroit Lions podcast. Absolutely. Thanks for jumping on with us. We greatly appreciate it. We'd love to bring you on
so much.
We're going back in time. Each week we're breaking down a previous Ohio State recruiting class. So when we get to those John Cooper eras, we might be dropping you a line.
Please do that. So I was at OU from 90 to 96. So and our football team was god awful. So I live vicariously through Buckeye fans. So.
Nice.
Love it.
Right.
Well,
thanks guys.
Again,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Jeff. You take care. Great show. Great guest. Make sure we didn't miss any comments here. Josh, what are we looking at for? Oh, here we go. Yes, but compared to the team up north, had better quarterbacks.
That's fair because you're talking about Brian Grease, who was a very good quarterback.
Yeah. Elvis Grbac. Sound like a disease.
Yeah, but he was also a quality quarterback. Drew Henson was a phenomenal. He was a highly rated recruit. I don't know if he's better than what Ohio State had. Tom Brady. People give Michigan a lot of credit for Tom Brady, but Tom Brady was a very, very average quarterback. I mean,
I would agree.
He was worse than Joe Germain. He was in the same tier as he might have been slightly better than Belisari.
Yeah.
Maybe a tier above Belisari. But collegiately, I mean, remember, Drew Michigan wanted desperately. Lloyd Card wanted desperately to play Drew Henson over Tom Brady. Yeah. And Drew Henson was just kind of such a raw talent because he was playing baseball at the time, yada, yada, yada. That was Drew Henson's issue. But they wanted desperately to play Henson, and that just didn't work out. But there is an argument to be made. Or did Ohio State have does Ryan Day recruit quarterbacks better than John Cooper? Hell yeah. Not a question in my mind, right? Yeah. If you name the top 10 Ohio State quarterbacks, if you name the top 10 quarterbacks in Ohio State history, Ryan Day's got 5 of them, and Coach Cooper's got, I don't know if he's got any, to be honest with you. And Earl Bruce didn't recruit Art Schlichter, so I don't know if Earl Bruce has any either. So it's definitely an interesting conversation.
We've got 5 minutes. I'd be remiss to say that, hey, breaking about 2 hours ago, Billy Yates, worked alongside with Matt Patricia in New England. He has been brought on to work alongside as a defensive quality control specialist for the Buckeyes.
That's great. Everybody that they've hired has had a very impressive resume. They actually hired Nate Ebner, the former Ohio State walk-on special team superstar. Dude, Hoying was very, very, very good. Former 5-star from St. Henry, 92 class. He was supposed to start over Kurt Herbstreit. Couldn't really grasp it.
You better answer that one, bud.
Papa Keats coming in. So Hoying was definitely. He probably is the best of the group. Also had a pretty underrated NFL career too. Broke some records with the Eagles.
Philadelphia,
yeah. Pretty interesting there. Some things just went wrong for Coop, unfortunately, at the quarterback position, but they also ran the ball a shit ton. But yeah, they hired Nate Ebner too, as well. Nate Ebner, Ohio State fans remember Nate Ebner as the Olympic rugby star, former walk-on special team star, defensive back, played with the Patriots forever under Matt Patricia, so I'm sure he had something to do with bringing him on. Nate Ebner, I've talked to him a couple of times, and very smart dude, very intelligent dude, hardworking dude. Those are usually the guys that make really good coaches, right? Because Nate Ebner is not big. He's not strong. He's not super fast, right? He's bigger, faster, and stronger than us. But, but in the scheme of playing in the NFL, that's a guy who worked for it. So,
well, I mean, you bring in somebody that parallels both sides of the ball with both programs. So,
yeah.
Can you decipher this one?
Tipa.
I'm going to say your dad's saying Tom Tupa.
Oh, damn, dude, Chris, good for you. Tom Tupa was an Earl Bruce recruit. Tom Tupa, his last year in college was 1990. He played one season with Cooper, so I don't think he counts. Right? He was drafted in 1990.
Nah, I would say no. But I mean, at least your dad's jumping on and being active in the chat. Jeff has me paranoid about the Patricia hire. Am I right?
Yeah, dude, he was real on Patricia there. But like he said though, he did say had some glowing words there at the end about how bad can he fuck it up? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, let's be real. I love 40 minutes with Jeff. I'd love to have Jeff back on, but Jeff is being brutally honest. But at the same time, he still burped us and put us to bed at the end. Did he not?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
We said I would argue Cooper had more studs than the three coaches after. Might be reaching for some. Well, I mean, studs.
Are you guys wanting us to do that? Are you guys wanting us to create an all Cooper and all Earl Bruce and all Woody Hayes and all? Or are you guys wanting us to do? The problem with doing that is that Woody Hayes coached for 30 friggin' years, so his team is obviously going to win, right? And Ryan Day, I would assume that I would assume that his team is probably going to be the worst because he hasn't been there as long. I don't know. Jim Tressel's team, Jim Tressel always coached more than the talent allowed. But goddamn, he'd have the best kicker and punter. Well, no, because the best punter is definitely Tom Skladany. That's under Woody.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I would think that Woody, you got 30 years, and he would have to have the best team, right?
I can't
hop along Cassidy and Archie Griffin.
Right. Well, I can't bring myself to say I need to line up Jeremiah Smith on one side of the ball to run a deep post across the center with Jack Tatum there. Right. I won't do that to that poor kid.
Maybe a guy like Hopalong Cassidy, who, by the way, doesn't get enough credit for how great he was on defense. Never let a pass get completed in his entire 4-year career, should be known. Started as a freshman back in the day where that was kind of frowned upon, should be known. Scored 3 touchdowns in the first college game he ever played, which he walked on halfway. It was a punt return touchdown against Indiana, should be known. That guy, he's smaller than both of us. Right, so maybe those skills don't translate. But a guy like Jack Tatum, that he was a big motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like that kind of does translate a little bit.
Will likes the idea. Maybe we've got a dead week. We'll talk. Dad jumps back in. Hey, Stringer and Cooper, they were some fucking studs. Were they not made?
Yeah, and those were also big recruits. You can go find high school film on Corey Stringer on YouTube. Those guys were both 5-star. I know Orlando Pace was a 5-star. I think if Corey Stringer wasn't a 5-star, he was a 4-star. You go back and look at some of those recruiting magazines by Tom Lemon and stuff like that. He knew how to recruit offensive line. There was no question there. The linebackers he recruited too. That would really surprise you. We talked about Preston Harris on the show, the 1990 show. You talk about Craig Powell. Craig Powell left. That's another thing too you have to remember with Cooper is that he had a lot of guys that were on the verge of being just disgusting stars, and they left early. You could say that for every coach other than Ryan Day because the NIL area has kept those people here. But you got Craig Powell, was probably going to be one of the better linebackers in Ohio State history, left early. Derek Ross, same at cornerback, left early.
Said, yeah, there's one.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think of the top of my head out of those two guys I remember vividly. David Boston left after 3 years. I don't know if Ryan Day would get. Ryan Day's got, thanks to NIL, these guys are staying their full 4 years. Some of them 5. So that's unfortunate.
Doug chimes in, hey, the game has changed a lot in the last 20 years. It's been longer than that.
Yeah, but Woody, if you go back and you look at Woody's coaching career, it really is he's still the best coach in Ohio State history I think by a pretty large margin because of the different eras that the game of football probably evolved the most under Woody Hayes. The second probably under Ryan Day because of the rules. But I mean, if you go back, he started coaching in the 50s. Like I said, with Hopalong Cassidy, you go watch like a game from like 1955. There's no fucking passes. You know what I mean? They're lining up with 3 running backs, and they're playing like 6 running backs. Go back and look at a box score at a 1955 game, and like 6 running backs are getting fucking carries, and it'll be a close game, not a blowout. And then he left, and they had Art Schlichter, who was a quarterback who was a 3-time Heisman finalist. So at the end of the day, that was probably Woody's undoing, was the Art Schlichter situation, because he was never going to be a coach that understood the passing game. But he did take him to that point, and they weren't in that. They went from he saw the game change from where you just run the ball 50 times a game, and the fucking goalpost was at the front of the goddamn field to
right.
To a game that throws the ball, they got fucking face masks,
still flags in the corners. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yeah, you could go. There's tape of Hopalong Cassidy bouncing his head off of the fucking goalpost, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's fucking wild. And then when he retired, there were, it's in color. He went black and white from being in color. It's wild, dude.
Josh, why don't you tell the folks they're still in the chat what we have coming up for next week?
So next week, you and I discussed we're going to draft the defense of the national championship teams, correct?
That is correct. I will, before we start drafting those defenses, I will put up our collective picks, put them side by side, let the viewers check those out, and then look at what our defense needs to do to get that ball back to the offensive side of our ball or of the game there. Yeah.
So I assume we're running a 4-3 because right? Because all 3 national championship teams ran basically a 4-3, correct?
We are in fact running a 4-3. Will jumps in. Cooper had studs. Other coaches were much more balanced. Okay. Woody gave.
Was Jim Tressel more balanced? I don't know. I don't know if Jim Tressel was more balanced. I don't know if Urban Meyer was either. Urban Meyer slammed that ball. He slammed that bitch. Carlos Hyde. And
I would agree.
He liked to fucking run that. He run the quarterbacks too.
Give me this one here.
Woody did give Bama Namath. That is a true story. Joe Namath from Pennsylvania wanted to go to Ohio State, was ready to go to Ohio State, and then Woody was like, "Dude, you throw the ball too damn pretty to be playing in this offense," and gave him the fair play. But that also shows you how fucking good Art Schlichter was. Because he was like, you throw the ball so damn pretty, I'm going to change the offense. Well, that also might have been because of the sign of the times. I don't know. I wasn't there.
It could be. I just remember the wishbone offense in the bygone era. Yeah. No, wholeheartedly. We're going to go over, do we want to cover Buckeye news and our fantasy draft defense? Do we want to cover the 2020 draft class and our Buckeye fantasy defense?
I don't think the last show we drafted, it took 45 minutes. So we should probably stick to the defense and then maybe some news or whatever.
I like that.
Yeah. And Doug was talking about the wishbone offenses. Doug, I don't know if the college football swinging back the other way. The success that Army and Navy had in the AAC this past year, you can already kind of see it rubbing off on other teams. Kennesaw State runs the option offense. Rice just went down to the FCS level to hire a coach that my understanding was that they specifically wanted a coach to run the option because they saw the success that Army and Navy had. So maybe it's coming back. I don't know. It's obviously never going to happen at Ohio State again. Well, I don't know.
Never say never, but I agree with you. More talent, more balance with talent wasn't much of a drop out of positions. I wouldn't argue that.
I don't know.
I know, but what I do know is we're going to draft a all-national championship defense next week, next Monday. We just missed under the wire. My birthday is Sunday. So I'm going to spend my birthday making graphics for our all-national championship defense. So I think with that being said, I'm going to get the first pick.
Oh, dude, I tried to give you the first pick last time.
Well, I was going to give you the first pick, and I was going to say, hey, we had to draft head coaches first. So I was going to screw you either way.
You can have the first pick in both coaches and team, bro. Happy birthday.
No, happy birthday, me. 35.
35.
The hype for saying is increasing. We're going to get a little bit of Buckeye news next week, Will. We're going to talk about an awful lot of, let's be real. I think every Buckeye Pulpit is talking about the quarterback competition right now. We're going to try to get you some of those in-between stories that maybe no one's talking about. That's what we like to do. That's what we like to talk about. It's like what we like to philosophize, if you would. But we're going to talk about some Buckeye news next week. We're going to draft our all-national championship defense next week. It's going to be a good time. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find us a way to keep updating our live picks so we can have those on screen. I think that'll be extremely beneficial for the both of us and the viewers in the chat as well. We're gonna figure that out.
And I tell you what, Will, I go to all the Ohio State games. I don't go to many practices because I do have a day job. But we will try to bring on a guest, not next week, but the week after, that does go to the practices that can give us a better rundown about that quarterback position and what's going on. So I will work on that.
Love that. Will jumps back in his advantage of 2 coordinators going into the Texas game.
I don't think it's going to matter if it's advantage or not because Julian Sain's going to be taking his first snaps at Ohio State. So it's like you're going to have so many new faces that even if it is an advantage, it's not going to fucking feel like it.
I like that answer.
That goes to the defensive line, offensive line too. I feel like people think I hate Julian Sain. I don't.
No. We're all for whoever produces on the field here at the Ohio State of Mind podcast. But that being said, this is the Ohio State of Mind podcast. As always, I am Chris. You can find me at CRunning15 on X. Josh, yourself?
Yeah, man. Follow me on X at Josh Keatley 16, and we'll be back next week.
Next week with some Buckeye news, drafting an all-national championship defense. Thanks each and every one of y'all for jumping in, for your questions, for your comments on how absolute a Matt Patricia Debbie Downer Jeff was, but we love Jeff and we'll have Jeff back on again in the future. Don't you fret. Have to agree with that next week. I agree with you, Will. We hope to see you back next week as well. And as always, from the Ohio State of Mind podcast,